I'm a 32-year-old guy, and this is about the absolute mess that started when my grandpa passed away a few weeks ago. He was 89, sharp as ever till the end, and passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was the glue holding our family together, but honestly, he left behind a legacy that's anything but peaceful. I've always been the responsible one in my family, not by choice, but because someone had to be. My older sister, let's call her Clara, is 35 and has always been entitled. She's the type who thinks the world owes her something just because she exists. Then there's my younger brother, Ben, 28, who hides his manipulative streak behind charm and humor. My parents? They've always been more interested in their own lives than their kids. Dad's a workaholic, and Mom's idea of parenting was delegating it to my grandparents. Rounding out this dysfunctional cast is my aunt, a woman who practically has greedy written on her forehead. So when Grandpa passed, I thought the hardest part would be grieving. Boy, was I wrong. The first clue came at the reading of his will. Grandpa's lawyer, Mr. Hart, gathered everyone at his office. It felt surreal sitting there with my family, a mix of polite small talk and thinly veiled tension filling the room. Mr. Hart started by expressing his condolences and then dove right in. The will named me as the executor. I didn't see it coming. Grandpa never mentioned it, but apparently he had been planning this for a while. He left clear documentation, and Mr. Hart emphasized that everything was legally airtight. As soon as those words left his mouth, the room erupted. Clara was the first to speak, and it wasn't pretty. She accused me of manipulating Grandpa into giving me power over his estate. Her voice climbed with every word, and her face turned red. Ben leaned back in his chair, smirking at first, but then started tossing him passive-aggressive comments about how convenient this all was for me. Aunt Gloria, never one to miss a drama opportunity, called the arrangement unfair and went on about how Grandpa owed her more for all the sacrifices she made for the family. Sacrifices? I couldn't think of a single one. Mr. Hart tried to maintain order and explained that Grandpa's will wasn't just a handout. There were conditions attached to the inheritance. Things like clearing debts, maintaining sobriety, and get this, demonstrating good moral character. I could feel the temperature in the room drop, as everyone realized this wasn't going to be the easy payday they expected. As if that wasn't enough, Grandpa left letters for specific family members which were to be delivered by me. Mr. Hart handed me the envelopes, and I felt every pair of eyes in the room burning into me. Clara muttered something under her breath about how this was all a setup. Ben just laughed and said, "Good luck with that," in a tone that made it clear he thought I'd fail. Aunt Gloria didn't even try to hide her anger, crossing her arms and glaring at me like I'd personally stolen her retirement fund. The kicker? Grandpa had also donated a significant chunk of his estate to charity. Mr. Hart revealed this toward the end, and you'd think someone had announced the apocalypse. Clara demanded to know how much was left for the family, and Aunt Gloria nearly shouted, he had no right. Ben just looked shocked, probably calculating how much less he'd get. By the time the meeting ended, I was overwhelmed. I knew my family wasn't exactly harmonious, but I hadn't realized how deep their entitlement ran. As we walked out of the office, Clara cornered me in the hallway. She demanded to see the letter Grandpa left her, practically yanking it out of my hands. I watched as her face shifted from anger to disbelief and then back to anger. She crumpled the letter and threw it at me, accusing me of forging it. Ben was no better. He waited until we were outside to start peppering me with questions about the estate's assets. How much was there, exactly? What did I know about the conditions for inheritance? Did Grandpa leave anything off the books? It felt less like a conversation and more like an interrogation. The ride home was a blur. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from the family group chat. Clara kicked things off with a long rant about how Grandpa's will was unfair and how I was obviously manipulating things behind the scenes. Aunt Gloria chimed in with her own accusations, claiming I had somehow influenced Grandpa's decisions. Even my parents weighed in, though their messages were more passive-aggressive than outright hostile. That night, I opened the letter Grandpa left for me. His words were calm, encouraging, and full of trust. He said he knew this wouldn't be easy but believed I could handle it. He reminded me of a childhood conversation we had, where he told me that doing the right thing often means standing alone. For the first time that day, I felt a small sense of resolve. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The entitlement, the accusations, the plotting, it was all a prelude to something bigger. As I put the letter away, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Clara, demanding a family meeting to discuss the will. It seemed like Grandpa's passing wasn't just the end of an era, it was the start of a full-blown family war. Update 1. The family group chat was an absolute battlefield by the time I woke up the next morning. Clara had taken the lead, posting a wall of text accusing me of manipulating Grandpa into naming me executor. Aunt Gloria backed her up, claiming I was clearly in this for myself and that Grandpa never would have done this if he were in his right mind. Ben chimed in with sarcastic remarks, and a few extended relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly decided they had opinions too. It didn't stop there. I started getting calls from cousins, aunts, and uncles, all asking what was going on and if the rumors Gloria was spreading were true. According to her, I had somehow convinced Grandpa to rewrite the will on his deathbed. The audacity of it left me speechless. Grandpa's lawyer had gone to great lengths to explain that everything was set in stone months before his passing. Later that afternoon, I delivered the first letter Grandpa had left behind, the one meant for Clara. She showed up to meet me at a cafe, her expression already sour. I handed her the envelope, and she tore it open on the spot. As she read, her face twisted into a mix of anger and disbelief. The letter was classic Grandpa, kind but blunt. He explained that her entitled behavior and poor financial decisions were why he couldn't trust her with the estate. He urged her to use this moment as a wake-up call and to make better choices moving forward. She didn't take it well. She crumpled the letter and threw it on the table, accusing me of forging it. She stormed out, leaving me sitting there with a bunch of judgmental stares from nearby tables. That night, she blasted the family group chat again, claiming the letter was fake and that I was trying to tarnish her reputation. Meanwhile, Ben was on a different mission. He started poking around, asking me detailed questions about the estate's assets. How much was in Grandpa's accounts? Were there any hidden investments? Did I know about any properties he hadn't mentioned? It felt like he was fishing for something, but I didn't have answers for him. Grandpa had always kept his financial matters private, and I was still piecing things together myself. The next bombshell dropped when I found out about a storage unit Grandpa had rented. The bill for it showed up in a stack of documents from his lawyer. The unit was locked, and I didn't have a key. The mystery of what Grandpa had stored there was both intriguing and unnerving. I decided to deal with it later, but the discovery added another layer of complexity to an already messy situation. As if things weren't chaotic enough, Aunt Gloria decided to get creative. She contacted Mr. Hart directly, trying to bypass me and get information about the estate. She demanded to know if there was a way to challenge the will, claiming it was obviously tampered with. Mr. Hart shut her down immediately and informed me of her stunt. He also warned me that my family might escalate their tactics and advised me to keep meticulous records of everything. At the same time, Clara wasn't letting up. She cornered me at a family gathering, insisting I rework the will to make it fairer. When I pointed out that doing so would be illegal, she brushed it off like it was no big deal. Gloria wasn't far behind, loudly complaining to anyone who would listen about how Grandpa had betrayed the family by donating a large portion of his estate to charity. The gathering itself was a disaster. Accusations were flying left and right. Some relatives sided with Clara and Gloria, while others stayed quiet, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. Ben floated between groups, acting like he was above it all, but occasionally dropping snide comments that fueled the fire. My parents predictably stayed on the sidelines. Dad muttered something about not wanting to get involved, and Mom looked more concerned about her wine glass than the family implosion happening around her. That evening, I received a voicemail from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. The message was cryptic. I think you should check out that storage unit sooner rather than later. There's stuff in there you'll want to see. I didn't know what to make of it, but it added to the growing pile of unanswered questions. By the time I got home, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My partner, who had been supportive through all this, listened patiently as I recounted the latest developments. They offered some comforting words, but admitted that the constant drama was starting to wear on them too. Before bed, I decided to reread the letter Grandpa had written me. It was a rare moment of calm in an otherwise chaotic day. His words reminded me why he had entrusted me with this responsibility and gave me a sense of purpose amid the turmoil. I didn't know what was in the storage unit, what my family would do next, or how this would all play out, but one thing was clear: this was far from over. Update 2. After a few days of back and forth with the storage facility, I finally got access to Grandpa's storage unit. It wasn't an easy process. They needed legal proof that I was the executor of his estate. Once the paperwork cleared, I found myself standing in front of a nondescript gray door in a row of identical units. The manager handed me the key and left me to it. The air inside was stale, and the faint smell of dust hit me as I rolled up the door. The unit wasn't huge, but packed with neatly stacked boxes, old furniture, and a couple of locked filing cabinets. My eyes landed almost immediately on a small box placed on top of a stack, labeled in bold black marker, for my name only. I grabbed it but didn't open it right away. Instead, I started sorting through the other items, hoping to get a clearer picture of why Grandpa had kept all this stuff locked away. There were family photo albums, some dating back decades. I found a collection of Grandpa's military medals, meticulously arranged in a shadow box. Old letters, receipts, and documents filled several boxes, some of them marked with names I recognized: my aunt, my siblings, and even my parents. Among the papers were canceled checks and bank statements that told a story Grandpa had never shared. He'd been financially bailing out family members for years. Loans to Gloria, college tuition payments for Ben, even a down payment on a house for Clara, all covered by Grandpa, with no repayment in sight. I opened the box labeled for me. Inside was a set of letters, all handwritten by Grandpa. One was addressed to me personally, and the others seemed to be reflections on his life and his disappointment in how the family treated each other. There were also keys to a smaller safe, which turned out to be buried under a stack of old newspapers in the back of the unit. Before I could finish cataloging everything, the inevitable happened. My phone buzzed with a call from Aunt Gloria, demanding to know why I hadn't informed the family about the storage unit. I had no idea how she found out, but she made it clear she wanted access. I told her the unit was part of the estate and that I was handling it as per Grandpa's instructions. That didn't go over well. The next day, things escalated. Gloria actually called the police, accusing me of hiding stolen family heirlooms in the unit. 2 officers showed up at my door, asking questions. Thankfully, I had all the necessary paperwork, including a copy of the will and letters from Grandpa's lawyer confirming my role as executor. Once they saw the documents, they left, but it was a level of audacity I hadn't expected, even from her. Not long after, Clara showed up unannounced at my house. She was livid, demanding to know what I'd found and why she hadn't been given her share. She pushed her way into the living room, refusing to leave until I told her what was in the storage unit. When I mentioned the financial records, her tone shifted. She became defensive, insisting Grandpa's help was a gift and shouldn't affect her inheritance. I stood my ground, and after a tense standoff, she finally left, slamming the door on her way out. Later that evening, I reached out to Mr. Hart for advice. He reassured me that everything was airtight legally, but warned me to keep all the records and letters secure. He also suggested I consider installing extra locks or even a small safe at home, given how things were escalating. It wasn't exactly comforting, but it was sound advice. Amid all this chaos, a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years reached out. They'd heard about the storage unit and offered some insight into Grandpa's charitable activities. According to them, Grandpa had been quietly supporting several local causes for years, including a scholarship fund and a veterans organization. This revelation only added fuel to the fire when it inevitably leaked to the rest of the family. Gloria and Clara were furious, claiming Grandpa had betrayed the family by giving away money that could have been theirs. The one surprising turn of events was Gloria's husband, who sided with me. He'd always been more level-headed, and it was clear he was getting fed up with her antics. His support caused some visible cracks in their marriage, which only added another layer of drama to the situation. As I sifted through the last of the documents from the storage unit, I found a letter from Grandpa that felt like a lifeline. In it, he explained his wish for me to use my inheritance for something meaningful, not just personal gain. It wasn't about the money, it was about honoring his legacy in a way that would make a difference. The letter was short, but it carried more weight than anything I'd read up to that point. That night, I started drafting an update post for Reddit, venting about the sheer absurdity of everything that had unfolded. It felt like the only place I could let it all out without being interrupted by another family meltdown. I wasn't sure where this was all headed, but one thing was clear. If Grandpa's goal was to teach the family a lesson, he definitely succeeded in exposing just how broken we were. Update 3. The situation exploded when Aunt Gloria decided to take things to court. She filed a lawsuit to contest Grandpa's will, claiming it was invalid due to undue influence. The move was absurd. Gloria had no legal standing, and the lawyer's documentation was airtight, but she didn't care. She was determined to cause chaos, and this was her way of turning up the heat. While the lawsuit simmered in the background, Clara launched a full-on smear campaign against me on social media. Posts accusing me of being greedy and selfish started popping up, each one more dramatic than the last. She painted a picture of herself as the victim, the wronged daughter who was being cut out of her inheritance by a manipulative sibling. Relatives and even old family friends began reaching out, some siding with her and others expressing confusion about the sudden drama. Ben, surprisingly, stayed out of it. A few days after Gloria filed her lawsuit, he called me. His tone was different, quieter, more serious. He apologized for his earlier behavior, admitting he'd been insensitive and had let his curiosity about the estate get the better of him. He said he wanted no part in the family's antics moving forward. While I appreciated his words, I couldn't ignore how distant he sounded, like he was keeping one foot out the door in case things got worse. Around this time, I started therapy. My partner had suggested it after seeing how much the situation was taking out of me. Therapy wasn't something I'd considered before, but it became a game changer. The therapist helped me start to untangle the mess of emotions and stress and gave me tools to set boundaries with my family. It didn't solve the problems, but it gave me a clearer sense of what I needed to do moving forward. Then came the family meeting. Clara and Gloria insisted on it, framing it as a chance to clear the air. I knew better but agreed, hoping to prevent things from escalating further. It was a disaster. The moment everyone sat down, accusations started flying. Gloria demanded access to the storage unit, claiming it held items that belonged to the family. Clara waved around screenshots of her social media posts, treating them like they were evidence in a court case. Even my parents, who had been mostly silent up to this point, seemed to lean toward their side, muttering vague comments about how things could have been handled differently. I had come prepared. I brought copies of Grandpa's will, legal documents, and even some of the letters he'd written to back up his decisions. When I laid everything out, instead of resolving the conflict, it only made things worse. Clara accused me of cherry-picking what to show, and Gloria dismissed the documents as irrelevant. The meeting ended with more shouting, and any hope of a truce vanished. The family began splitting into factions after that. Some extended relatives sided with Clara and Gloria, buying into their narrative of betrayal. Others distanced themselves entirely, not wanting to get caught in the crossfire. A few reached out to me privately, expressing support but staying neutral in public. The fractures in the family were growing deeper by the day. In the midst of this chaos, Mr. Hart called to inform me of something unexpected. Grandpa had left a video message to be played at a specific date. It was addressed to the entire family and was meant to be a final word on his wishes. When I mentioned this to Clara and Gloria, they immediately demanded to see it early. I refused, standing firm on Grandpa's instructions. That decision earned me another round of accusations in the group chat, with Gloria declaring that I was hiding something. A few weeks later, Gloria's lawsuit was dismissed. The judge didn't even let it get past the preliminary stages, ruling that she had no legal basis to challenge the will. That didn't stop her from vowing to appeal, though she had no chance of success. Still, it was clear she wasn't going to back down quietly. Meanwhile, my partner suggested we take a short vacation to get away from the drama. It was a tempting idea, but before we could make any plans, I received an anonymous letter in the mail. The envelope was unmarked, and the note inside was typed. It warned me to watch my back and accused me of playing a dangerous game. I couldn't tell who had sent it, but it left me unsettled. Whether it was Clara, Gloria, or someone else entirely, the letter was a reminder of just how far things had spiraled out of control. Amid the chaos, an unexpected ally emerged. A family friend who had known Grandpa for decades reached out, offering to help mediate. They had been close to Grandpa and were familiar with his values and intentions. Their calm and logical demeanor was a welcome change from the storm of accusations and drama. While I wasn't sure mediation would solve anything, it felt like a small step towards sanity in an otherwise insane situation. As I sat down to draft my next Reddit update, it struck me how far things had come. What had started as a straightforward task of honoring Grandpa's wishes had turned into a full-blown civil war. With the video message still looming and tensions higher than ever, I knew this was far from over. Update 4. The day of Grandpa's video message arrived. It felt like the calm before a storm. The lawyer's office had set up a small conference room with enough seating for everyone involved. The air was thick with tension as family members trickled in, their faces a mix of curiosity and hostility. Clara and Aunt Gloria arrived together, their whispers audible from across the room. Ben came alone, staying quiet and keeping his distance. My parents walked in last, looking as though they'd rather be anywhere else. Once everyone was seated, Mr. Hart wheeled in a small TV and DVD player, placed the disc inside and pressed play. Grandpa's familiar voice filled the room. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, wearing his usual sweater vest, and looked straight into the camera. His tone was calm, but there was no mistaking the seriousness of his words. He started by thanking everyone for coming and then got straight to the point. He explained that the video was his way of addressing the family directly, without lawyers or letters getting in the way. His first order of business was defending his decision to name me as executor. Grandpa made it clear that this was a choice based on trust and reliability, not favoritism. He acknowledged that the decision might upset some people but stood by it firmly. Then, things got personal. Grandpa addressed each family member by name, calling out their behaviors and urging them to do better. Clara was first. He spoke about her sense of entitlement and how it had led her to make poor financial and personal decisions. He urged her to take this as an opportunity to reflect and grow, instead of blaming others for her problems. Clara's face turned red, and she crossed her arms but stayed silent. Next was Aunt Gloria. Grandpa didn't hold back, pointing out her history of exploiting family relationships for personal gain. He revealed that he had hired a private investigator to look into certain financial matters and had discovered questionable spending habits and even attempts to manipulate him in his final years. Gloria's jaw dropped and the room went quiet. Grandpa's tone softened toward the end, encouraging her to focus on mending relationships rather than chasing material wealth. Ben was addressed more gently. Grandpa acknowledged his potential and how he had always been the family's peacemaker, but he warned Ben not to let his charm turn into manipulation. He asked him to use his skills for good and to support his siblings instead of fueling conflict. Finally, Grandpa spoke to my parents. He didn't mince words. He expressed disappointment in their passivity and their tendency to avoid family problems rather than addressing them head-on. He ended by asking them to step up and be better role models for their children, even if it was late in the game. Then came the bombshell. Grandpa announced that he had set up a secret trust fund for me. The fund would only be accessible once my role as executor was complete and on the condition that I didn't cave to family pressure or alter his wishes. He explained that this was his way of ensuring I had the resources to move forward and do something meaningful with my life, no matter how the family drama unfolded. The room erupted as soon as the video ended. Gloria accused the video of being edited to favor me. Clara started crying, alternating between anger and disbelief. My parents tried to calm things down, but their attempts were half-hearted at best. Ben surprised me by walking over and quietly thanking me for everything I'd been doing. He said he'd been doing a lot of thinking and wanted to turn his life around. It wasn't much, but it felt genuine. As people began to leave, extended relatives approached me, offering apologies for taking sides earlier. A few admitted they had believed the rumors Gloria and Clara had been spreading but now saw things differently. It was bittersweet, vindicating, but the damage had already been done. Later that evening, I sat down with Mr. Hart to go over the final steps for settling the estate. He confirmed that things were almost wrapped up and reassured me that Gloria's attempts to interfere were legally dead in the water. There was finally a light at the end of the tunnel. That night, I started thinking about Grandpa's wish for me to use my inheritance meaningfully. The idea of donating part of it to one of the causes he had supported began to take shape in my mind. It felt like the right way to honor him and close this chapter of my life on my terms. I posted another update on Reddit, sharing the details of the video and the fallout that followed. The responses were overwhelming, with people applauding Grandpa's foresight and my handling of the situation. While the comments were uplifting, they couldn't erase the lingering sadness I felt about how fractured my family had become. The drama wasn't entirely over. Gloria was still muttering about appeals, and Clara's social media posts hadn't stopped, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could see a path forward. Grandpa's legacy wasn't just the estate or the trust fund, it was the lessons he had tried to instill in all of us. Whether the rest of the family learned from them or not was out of my hands. All I could do was honor his memory and move on. Update 5. It's finally over. The estate has been fully settled, the legal drama has fizzled out, and for the first time in what feels like forever, I can breathe again. The process was exhausting, but Grandpa's wishes were carried out exactly as he intended. Despite all the chaos, no one managed to derail his plans. The first major change I made after wrapping up the estate was to go no contact with a few family members. Gloria was at the top of that list. After her failed lawsuit and endless schemes, she faded into the background, still grumbling but with no real power to disrupt my life anymore. Clara also stepped back. though not without one last attempt at reconciliation. She reached out with a half-hearted apology claiming she didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. It felt more like damage control than genuine regret, so I kept my distance. Ben, surprisingly, stayed true to his word. He's been working on himself, and it shows. He moved out of his shared apartment with a group of enablers, got a stable job, and even started volunteering at a local shelter. He keeps his updates brief but consistent, and for now I'm cautiously optimistic about his progress. Out of everyone, he's the only one who seems to have taken Grandpa's message to heart. With the family drama no longer consuming my days, my personal relationships began to improve. My partner, who had been my rock throughout this ordeal, finally got to see me relaxed for the first time in months. We started going on weekly hikes, something we used to love but had put on hold during the chaos. Therapy also helped me find a sense of closure. It gave me the tools to separate myself emotionally from the toxic dynamics that had dominated my life for so long. One of the most meaningful moments came when I decided what to do with part of my inheritance. Grandpa had always been a big supporter of local education initiatives, particularly programs that helped underprivileged kids. I donated a significant portion to a scholarship fund he had contributed to during his life. The organization was thrilled, and they're planning to name a scholarship in his honor. Knowing that part of his legacy will continue to make a difference was deeply fulfilling. The storage unit also came full circle. After carefully cataloging everything, I returned most of the family heirlooms to their rightful owners. Even Gloria and Clara received items that belonged to them, though I made sure to document every handoff to avoid future drama. Grandpa's personal letters and the trust fund details remain with me as they were meant to. The experience of going through his belongings brought a mix of emotions, but it also gave me a clearer picture of who he was and the values he stood for. A few distant relatives reached out after everything settled. Some sent heartfelt messages, apologizing for jumping to conclusions during the height of the drama. Others simply expressed admiration for how I handled the situation. It was a reminder that not everyone in the family was against me, and some connections might still be worth maintaining in the future. The final surprise came from Grandpa himself. While organizing the last of his books, I found a small envelope tucked into one of the pages. Inside was a letter addressed to me. It was short but packed with wisdom. He thanked me for stepping up, acknowledged how hard the process must have been, and reminded me that doing the right thing often comes at a cost. His closing words stuck with me: "You've done more for this family than they'll ever realize. Now it's time to live your life on your terms." Reddit's response to my final update was overwhelming. Thousands of comments poured in, many applauding my strength and composure through it all. People shared their own stories of family drama, offering solidarity and encouragement. Some even asked if I'd consider writing a book about the experience. The outpouring of support reminded me of how universal these struggles can be and how important it is to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard. The family remains divided, and I've made peace with that. Gloria and Clara still have their grievances, but their voices have grown quieter. Ben seems to be carving out a new path for himself, and I genuinely hope he sticks with it. As for my parents, they've reached out a few times, but their lukewarm apologies haven't done much to bridge the gap. I don't feel any obligation to mend things. If they want a relationship, they'll have to put in the effort. Now I finally feel free to move forward. Grandpa's legacy wasn't just the money or the trust fund, it was the lessons he left behind. He taught me to stand firm, to value integrity over convenience, and to focus on the things that truly matter. Honoring his memory means living those lessons every day, and that's exactly what I intend to do.